Hi, I'm Larry Puckett. Today I've got a fairly short video for you. I originally was going to include this in Friday's video, but it would have made it too long. So I decided to break this out and do it separately. So in today's video, what I want to do is talk about or answer a few questions that came up previously when I did this build on the other modules 4 years ago. Yes, it was September of 2020, the last time that I started building those other modules. So this is going to be a bit of an update for you. But there were a couple of very common questions that popped up repeatedly in the comments back then, and I wanted to address those. And then on Friday, we will begin construction of the modules. And as you can see here, I've already built one of them just to make sure everything was going to fit together properly and come out the right height, and it did, as you can see. So we'll be working on building the second of those two modules starting on Friday. So let's go ahead and take a look at some revisions that I have made to the track plan and also answer a couple of very common questions that came up when I built the other modules back in 2020. Okay, let's go ahead and take a quick look at the revised track plan. There's only a couple of minor changes. First of all, you'll note right here, I've added a turnout just past the station so that I can continue a lead out this direction. And at some point, I will put another industry out here. I'm not sure what it's going to be yet. It could be a quarry or something like that, so just a way to generate a little bit more operating interest and traffic in this area. So that's one thing that I've added there. Also down at this end, I've extended this lead in front of the Railway Express office out onto the curved module. So that'll give that a little bit extra room there to put maybe four express cars at a time. Other than that, I did move this ladder just a bit so that these ends where the modules are joined will not interfere with the placement of the points and the switch motors that are going to be used to operate them. So those are there. Other than that, I did, as you can see, I did flip it so that we can look at it from the front of the layout instead of from the back, the way it was before. But that's, that was just a minor change. I do have something out here, as you can see, going off in this direction. I'm not going to tell you about that. That's something we're going to reserve for a future video because I do have quite a bit to show you with that one. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about some of the questions that I've gotten about the way I construct modules. Hit that little red subscribe button, and when the little bell comes up, click on it and click all. Several years ago now, when I built the other modules, there were several comments that came up that were very similar. And so I want to address those before we get started. And the first one dealt with the type of lumber that I decided to use. Now I'm using what is called dimensional lumber. So this is a 1x4, and it's available in various lengths, 6 feet, 8 feet, various things like that, here in the United States. I'm sure that they have similar sizes throughout the rest of the world. At any rate, the important thing is you can go to your local lumber yard or big box hardware store, as we call them here in the US, and you can purchase whatever lengths and dimensions you need. Now, the other side of this, and what people ask me is, why did I choose to use dimensional lumber instead of plywood? Well, the issue with using plywood is, in order to get sections, pieces like this, to make the sides and the ends and other cross members, that kind of thing, supports, you have to be able to cut that plywood, which usually comes in sheets of about 4 by 8 foot. You can get 4 by 4 foot here in the US, but it's much more economical to buy the larger sheets. And then you can, then you would have to rip it into sections like this. In other words, you're going to have to cut the plywood into strips that look about like this in order to build your modules. And that requires a lot of work and a lot of specialized equipment that a lot of people are not going to have, because you can't just take a jigsaw out or a handsaw out and start trying to cut straight, smooth, sections of wood or using plywood like you can get with dimensional lumber. So you can go to a lumber shop or lumber store and you can get them in many cases to pre-cut pieces of wood for you. They're probably not going to want to rip a whole bunch of plywood for you, or it's going to cost you a lot. In addition, a lot of people might have a saw that allows them to cut dimensional lumber without too much problems. Many people will have a small handheld circular saw that can be used to cut members like this to length, or you might have what's called a chop saw or a motorized miter saw that can be, which is what I use, in order to just literally chop these to a certain length. And that makes it quick and easy to produce what you need and have it nice, smooth, square cuts. So that's why I prefer to do this. It's a much easier job to put one of these modules together if you use dimensional lumber than if you use stripped plywood. Now, the second question that came up quite often was one of using glue versus screws. Why didn't I glue my modules together instead of screwing them together? Well, right off, I will tell you, I am a firm believer in mechanical fasteners, and screws are mechanical fasteners. Now, there are other reasons that I prefer not to use glue. This is Titebond 3, or Ultimate Wood Glue, and chemically this is a PVA, which if I remember correctly is polyvinyl acetate. Now, one of the problems, and if you'll look into this quite a bit, you will find out that a lot of people will tell you that PVA glues will creep over time. They are not dimensionally stable over periods of time. More importantly, they are heat sensitive. If you glue something up and then go at it with a heat gun, you will find that you can get that glue to cut loose. Similarly, if you have your modules in the back of a car or a van headed to a show and you park somewhere for a while to get lunch or something like that, you might find that when you get back, your car has heated up to the point that your glue seams are starting to loosen a bit and creep on you. Now, just as importantly, if you build your modules and keep them in a garage or a loft or a shed or an attic or any other place that is not temperature controlled, you might find that your PVA glues tend to let loose over time. So that's a second reason that I do not use glue for this kind of situation. I think in the long run, I think that a good old-fashioned screw is going to just do a better job at holding it all together for you. Another reason that I prefer to use screws as opposed to glue is if you get to the point where you need to move a cross member, say, because you suddenly find that a tortoise or other type of switch machine needs to be in a certain position under your layout. If you have glued a cross member or a support in place, it's going to be very difficult or more difficult for you to get that piece of wood out of the way. Whereas if you had screwed it in, all you have to do is back out the screws, change the position, screw it back together, and then install your tortoise or other switch machine. So I think that is another very good reason why you might want to consider screwing as opposed to gluing. So, okay, enough about those two questions. I'm sure there will be a lot of others that come up in the comments, and we'll deal with those as they come up. Now, as I said, I cut this out of dimensional lumber, and various people in the past asked me if I could provide a cut list for all of the dimensional lumber that go into a module. I will do that. I will put a list in the description of this video, all of the pieces of wood that I cut and the dimensions for them for a module. So you'll be able to take that and figure out just what you need to purchase in order to build your module. Well, that's it for today's video. Hope you guys have a great week. I'll see you here on Friday with that video on building the second module to go along with this one for Alexander. Bye now.